Welcome to the LivXplore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Payne, founder and owner of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle. Today, I have with me Isaiah Chass, our founding agent. Isaiah, thanks for joining us.
You bet. We got a topic that we don't talk about enough today.
Right. We have touched on it before, but it's something that it's going to be a continual trend here until this goes away, which probably won't happen in the next couple decades. So we'll be talking about this a lot. That is housing inventory, and how many homes do we need in California that way?
Yeah, and there's numerous studies by numerous organizations, anywhere from 1 million homes to 3.5 million homes. But if you look at Governor Newsom's initial plan of attack to address the housing issue, he said we need 3.5 million homes.
Yes, I think not only he said that we needed 3.5 million homes, but just to kind of go through, yes, not to be political, both sides understand that there's a need for housing. But during his last campaign, he did, part of his pitch was, the need for housing. And he identified that 3.5 million homes need to be built. And I believe he made a commitment at that time saying that 3.5 million homes would be built by 2025. So we're a couple years away from that. However, there's just no way that goal is going to be met.
I think we're at about 400,000 homes have been either planned to be built or built since the beginning of his campaign.
Yeah, he's averaging about 100,000 a year right now. So I didn't even realize it was that much. But yeah, maybe it's coming up on that with what's planned that way. Right. So they're only about 3 million off from what they from what he had promised to build. And kind of going on that note, the Housing and Community Development Department has issued a report mentioning that the state needs to build 2.5 million homes in California over the next 8 years. And California puts out these reports and identifies the need for housing in these 8-year housing cycles that way. Sonoma County, through that report, has been mandated to build 14,500 new homes over this time. Again, that's over this 8-year period. And that's all type of homes. That's apartments and I believe within each municipality, I think they get to designate their own specific need. We were at the city council meeting, Petaluma City Council meeting a couple Mondays ago for the Scotts Ranch development. And luckily that passed. So if you haven't seen that podcast, we'll probably put it back out there so you can replay. Great housing project. We need it. Just 28 homes, though, but thankfully it did get approved that way. But so we were there in support of the project, and I'm kind of bouncing all around, but that was a really cool project. The opposition, the Kelly Creek project, which was the main opposition for Scotts Ranch, eventually became their biggest supporter, and they figured out how to work together to put the homes in. So that's a really cool story.
And it's something you don't see all the time, and we'll touch on that later on this about working with local builders, that project would not have been anywhere close to what it is now if you were working with
like a national builder.
Totally.
Yep. No, not at all.
I want to go back on one point. You're talking about the Sonoma County housing needs. If you I'm looking at the chart right now. In 2000, the year 2000, we had about 183,000 homes. To 2010, we increased to 202,000 homes. So that's roughly a 20,000 home increase across those 10 years.
Right.
You look at between 2010 and 2019, we've only increased 5,000 homes.
Right.
So we need to get building to catch up.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, we'll go through that and why that trends kind of happen that way. But again, like Sonoma County has a state mandated goal to build 14,500 new homes. And again, these are all type of different types of homes that needs to be built. That 14,500 represents a 72% increase. It sounds like from your statistics even more than that, but 72% increase when compared to the number of units built during the last 8-year housing cycle. And what happened again was we had the foreclosure crisis in 2007, 2008 until 2012-ish or whatnot, and that really numbed new home builders. So especially like the regional, local, mid-level builders, they became very careful in building units, and the national builders as well. So like you said, we just haven't been building enough units, and now it's really time to play catch up that way. In fact, here I have something. Let me pull up this chart here to give you an idea. So here's part of the problem. You were talking about homes built in like the last 20 years. So this is just off housing permits in California. In 1954, there was about 200,000 housing permits. 1954, 1956, 1958, somewhere bouncing around between 150,000 and 200,000 new home permits. The majority of those were single-family homes. Looks like somewhere between 30 and 50,000 at that time were duplexes and multi-unit homes that way. And then, at various times, it looks like 1964, the number of permits jumped up to 300,000. So California was building quite a bit at that time. Shortly after that, it dropped back down to 100,000, and you see these building permit cycles. I would say over about 10 years, kind of going up and down. But then you start seeing in the 1990s, like there's a trend that changes where the building permits really drop down to 100,000 and kind of stay there. They do go back up to 200,000 permits a year back in early 2004, 2006, right before the foreclosure crisis and the last housing crisis, and then they drop way down to like 50,000 permits a year. In 2014, 2016, they crept back up to 100,000 permits a year. And this is statewide. Again, this isn't specific to Sonoma County. This is statewide. But that shows you right there that we've slowed building. And now we have this huge problem where we need to build. And again, I think that's really important to have that perspective, because when people are driving around, they're saying, oh, what's this 3 or 4 story apartment building going up and all these, this new building going up. We're playing catch up. We're not overbuilding by any means. We're playing catch up.
We're not even really playing catch up enough. We're not even meeting the demand that we need.
Right. Just going into that, I mean, Generation H, an organization here in Sonoma County, they did their own study. And again, the state report says we have to build just under 15,000 homes. Generation H says that Generation Housing says that is not going to put a dent in the supply demand, we really need to build 58,000 units by 2030. So again, right now the state report shows, let's say 15,000, and Generation H is saying, well, no, it's closer to 60. So the state's identifying, 25% of what Generation H is saying is needed. Who's to know exactly how much is needed? But here's what I'm really concerned about from the message that I heard from the city council meeting, was that one, how do we build these homes, 14,500? Because that's the consensus was that's a lot of homes, and they didn't think they could do that. And the language, I guess, that comes down from the state is that you have to show good faith, which makes sense. And so then the discussion was in the council, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but this became really concerning, was how many homes do we have to build to show good faith?
Right.
So
and it almost came down to a point where even if they meet the requirements, is there a way that they can make a housing development project not pass through or make sense almost?
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. Maybe we'll address it the other. Yeah, that was really a concerning discussion at the council meeting, that if they put all the requirements of for a new housing project in place, and a builder comes in and meets all those requirements, they still want to trigger in place where that they can disapprove of the project just because they don't like it. Gosh, that seems.
And we don't even want to get into it, but it is something that needs to be brought up.
Yeah, that's for a future podcast, and maybe a follow up to this. Right. That certainly wasn't the consensus of the council, but that was brought up, and there was a council person that said, hey, you may want to rethink that logic because builders won't want to build here. Right. And so, but yeah, we'll get to that. But that being said, I mean, again, it wasn't like, hey, how do we build 14,500 homes, or how does Petaluma build their portion of the 14,500 homes? It was, how do we? I mean, the what I came away from that meeting was, how do we build as few homes as possible and still stay in good faith with the state?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was very clear,
right,
what they were saying that way.
Right.
And again, when you're looking at the 14,500 figure, that, in my opinion, isn't even going to dent it. I'm going to lean more to the side of Generation H's study that way, or 58,000 units.
I mean, if you look at the fires that we had, we haven't even rebuilt all the homes that we lost from the fire, and
right.
we're already at a shortage.
A shortage that way.
Before that.
Right. So again, like, that message that they're sending is really concerning, and I hope people out there, gain a little perspective that way. Is like, we have to start building like crazy, and just trying to figure out how to build the minimum amount of homes to stay in the faith of the state, so you continue to get funding and things of that nature, is really sort of just kicking the can down the road. You're not trying to solve the problem.
Right.
You're not addressing the problem. You're just like, hey, what's the minimum amount of work we have to do to make ourselves look good?
And on top of that, how often do you hear people saying we need affordable housing? We need affordable housing. That's
right.
Totally accurate. We do need affordable housing, but we need all sorts of housing. We've talked about it at great lengths. Don't want to sound like a broken record, but what happens when you don't build in every price point is it affects the entire market. It's not just, you're not just going to build affordable homes and correct the housing need. If you don't build that, $2 million home, then you don't have those homes for that move up buyer. Then they start buying a less expensive home,
right.
and then it just is a trickle down effect that you never will have an affordable home.
Right. Yeah, you have to build in all segments. I mean, unfortunately, we're up here in the North Bay. A $700,000, $800,000, even a $900,000 home now can be a first time home buyer's home.
Totally.
And people think, I talk to people and they say, oh, well, we need to build, cheaper, more affordable homes. Well, if we don't build all the way across that board, that $500,000 home that you want is going to be a $700,000 home really quick, because it's going to get built up, because just the supply and demand's there. So it's a very short-sighted argument to say, hey, we need to build within one sector, because it's just not going to work that way. The market is going to dictate the cost of the homes, the cost of rent, things of that nature. And the only way you lower it is by having more units available. And so again, like, trying to build within one segment doesn't really make sense. On that note, I just saw a statistic, and I think this statistic's probably it underestimates how expensive apartments are. But I just saw that renting a 1-bedroom apartment now costs over $2,000 in 14 of the 100 largest U.S. cities in the United States. I would think it's a little bit more than that. I mean, we're here in Petaluma. Depending on that unit, that 1 bedroom is probably above.
Certainly in the mid 2000s for sure.
Yeah, right. So I think it is even higher than that. But that's showing that not only in California but everywhere, housing is getting more expensive, uncomfortably expensive, and the only way out of this is building. Mm-hmm. So
and today we've only talked about California housing. Obviously, this is a national issue. I can't remember the statistics that came out with John Burns that said we needed, somewhere between 30 and 40 million homes across the nation.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a huge amount, and realize it's just so many of the hedge funds and Wall Street, again, we talked about this last time, has got in and increased their positions and new home builders and things like that. I mean, I'm sure there's an incentive to build more, but from their standpoint, from an investor standpoint, why would you ever create a surplus?
Right.
Why wouldn't you keep that demand so strong? Because that's a very safe asset class.
And they're already trying to increase their stake in real estate as is.
Yeah, exactly that way. So, I just think that, we have to build. And on that note, again, the national builders, the big hedge funds, Wall Street's increasing their shares on the national builders, getting back to like Scott's Ranch and the Kelly Creek project. Local municipalities really need to focus on working with those local or regional builders.
And I don't think that's talked about enough.
It's not. And what happens is that, eventually, you'll have a community come in and they'll say, I mean, you could see it from the city council meeting where it's like, hey, well, what if we just want to make it difficult for builders? What if we don't like the project? What if,
Right.
even if it meets all the requirements that way? And what happens is that, the mid-level builders, mid-sized builders, they don't have as deep of pockets to fight it. And eventually they go away. And then you have like a big national builder coming in and buying up the project. And you need to be really careful. So, and here's why. Before, that was, I guess you could say, a viable way of killing a housing project. But now we have some state laws in place. And if you don't work with that local builder, what's going to happen is you're going to have a national builder come in here and use some of these laws to shove a housing project down your throat. And there's nothing that the local government's going to be able to do.
And more so, it's not going to meet any of the needs and wants that the community wants.
Right. You get a national builder in here. Do you think they give a damn about the Kelly Creek project? Absolutely not. So like, really the city of Petaluma dodged a bullet. And that was part of the incentive. Let's be real. That's part of the reason why it was passed this time. It was down to 28 homes. And it was like, hey, if this doesn't work, potentially you could have a big builder come in, and there's been some laws that have changed that they could shove it down your throat. So, and
the other thing, you look at how, proper way to say this, but how difficult it's been for David on Homes to go through the entitlement process of this land. It is zoned for over 100 units, and it's taken them 20 years to get to 28 units.
Right.
So what message does that show to other local builders in, just say, the North Bay?
Right.
Why would they want to go down that road when it's going to take them 20 years and their project might come out at 25% of what they initially planned for? So then what does that leave for builders?
Right.
It leaves a national builder.
Right.
And then you get the project that you didn't even want from the start.
Yeah. I mean, you have a national builder come in. You're not going to get the additional 47 or 50 acres for Helen Putnam Park that the builder, divided off that way. You're not going to get we sell homes for a living. The national builder, their product, in my opinion, generally isn't as good as like the local boutique or regional builder. They put out a better product. They find something that like they definitely integrate it within the community. Maybe it's outdoor activities or things like that, but they integrate it in the community. So yeah, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. And especially now, because everyone knows we have a need for housing, jumping up and down and saying that we don't have enough water or parking or whatever, these arguments just aren't viable at this point. Everyone identifies that we have a need for housing, and you're either going to work with the regional builder or you're going to have the national builder shove a bigger project down your throat, and you're not going to like it. And again, these are at the state level. There's laws been put in place now to address these issues. Again, these laws were put in place because municipalities, they can't get out of their own way. Right. The biggest reason why we have this lack of housing is because of local governments for decades not approving housing projects. So here we are. And so what the state said is, well, you guys have made a lot of bad decisions over the last couple of decades, so we're going to take the authority out of your hands.
Right.
So,
anyway. And I've heard from the community so much. There's always an opposition. First, it's it's an infill project and they're trying to build up, and then there's people in the community that say, well, we don't want to have a San Francisco, we don't want a city, we don't want 6-7 story buildings.
Right.
So then what's the other alternative? You build outside of the city limits. You push out, and then you're taking up country and farmland, and then there's opposition that, well, that's what makes Petaluma so special, is that we have all this open space. So at some point there has to be a meeting of the minds, or a realization that we have to tackle this. There are good alternatives for infill projects. There are underutilized lots.
Correct.
So we have to address it somehow.
Yep. You got to go up, or you got to go out. There's not really any other directions you can build that way. And it just, it's time. So again, for the people of the North Bay, I understand there's more building than usual that's coming up, but realize it's because we have a huge need for housing, and we're still way behind that way. So any other final thoughts?
No, I mean, I hear it quite a bit that people that aren't as, versed on the topic, they'll tell me that, oh, I drive around and I see development projects everywhere. It might seem that way,
right?
But it's still not even close to, we said at the very beginning, we're less than 78% of the building that we had in the last decade, and that's still not even keeping up with the demand. So
right.
Bottom line, build. We need it. And if we don't do it, it's going to get a lot more uncomfortable than it is now.
Yep, exactly. So. Well, on that note, thank you very much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe so you can see future content from us. I'm Sean Payne, owner and founder of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle. And Isaiah, thank you very much for making this podcast happen today.
Absolutely.
You guys have a good one.
See you guys next time.
Welcome to the LivXplore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.